Because the breach was not indiscipline, it was systemic. On the Eastern Front, the same disbelief echoed. An Operation Bagration, launched on June 22, 1944, the Red Army annihilated Army Group Center and Belarus. German units were encircled faster than orders could be issued. Soviet forces struck weak seams that German planners believed invisible. Survivors later recalled that Soviet thrusts avoided strongpoints entirely, as if guided by insider knowledge. German intelligence officers reviewing the catastrophe wrote in blunt language, "Enemy operational awareness exceeds plausible reconnaissance." Behind closed doors, some officers whispered the unthinkable, that German ciphers were compromised. Others refused to believe it. Enigma was a pillar of faith. To admit it was broken meant admitting the Reich had been naked for years. By December 1944, during the Ardennes offensive, the illusion finally collapsed. The German plan, Unternehmen Wacht am Rhein, was among the most tightly guarded operations of the war. Radio silence, hand-delivered orders, severe penalties for leaks. And yet, American commanders were not surprised. They were cautious, yes, but prepared. When German armor punched through the fog near Losheim Gap on December 16th, U.S. units were staggered but not blind. Within days, supply dumps were relocated, defensive lines stiffened. By December 18th, Allied intelligence summaries already described German fuel shortages with alarming accuracy. A German colonel from 2nd Panzer Division, captured near Sels on December 24th, reportedly laughed during questioning, not out of humor, but exhaustion. "You knew we were empty," he said. "You waited until we were empty." He was right. The realization that the enemy knew you better than you knew yourself is not merely strategic, it is psychological annihilation. German officers began censoring themselves even in thought. Radios went silent, orders became vague, initiative collapsed. A captain might hesitate before moving a battalion, not because of fear of the enemy, but fear of being anticipated. Every delay widened the gap. By March 1945, as Allied armies crossed the Rhine, captured German documents revealed officers no longer trusted maps printed by their own headquarters. They believed the Americans already had them. In a POW camp near Remagen, a former signals officer of the 352nd Infantry Division wrote in a letter never sent, "We were fighting ghosts who read our mail." He wasn't exaggerating. The war did not end because of intelligence alone. Men still bled, cities still burned, but the balance had shifted long before the final shots. The Germans had built a war machine that assumed secrecy as a constant. When that assumption died, the machine followed. And perhaps the most chilling detail is this: most German officers never learned the truth. They went to their graves believing someone had betrayed them, an aide, a clerk, a coward under interrogation. They never knew that the betrayal came from mathematics, patience, and a quiet room in England where the enemy listened and waited. "They know our train numbers." The German major said it quietly on the morning of June 10, 1944, in a requisitioned farmhouse outside St. Lo, Normandy, as rain tapped against broken shutters. He wasn't panicking. He was confused. On the table in front of him lay a captured American intelligence summary, mud-stained, folded, partially burned. Yet the names were clear. Unit designations, fuel shortages, even the nicknames German officers used among themselves. The paper should not have existed. 3 days earlier, on June 6, 1944, the Atlantic Wall had cracked open under Allied boots. German commanders expected chaos behind the beaches, confusion, scattered landings, blind advances. That was how invasions worked. Instead, American artillery was falling on pre-registered coordinates. Bridges were bombed hours before armored columns reached them. Field headquarters were struck minutes after radios crackled to life. This was not guesswork. This was intimacy. By June 8th, officers of Panzer Lehr Division, one of Germany's best-equipped armored units, were already reporting something unsettling. American forces were maneuvering as if they had read the German operational diary. Roads that should have been safe were under observation. Alternate supply routes, rarely used, scarcely mapped, were shelled precisely when fuel trucks arrived. One staff officer noted bitterly that Allied fire waited for us like a hunter who knows the trail. The shock ran deeper than tactical surprise. It cut into German confidence itself. For years, the Wehrmacht had believed in the opacity of its command structure. Orders were compartmentalized. Enigma encrypted everything from army movements to weather reports. Security briefings warned officers to burn papers, to speak in code, to trust the machine. And yet here, in Normandy's hedgerows thick with wet earth and crushed apple blossoms, the Americans were fighting like men who already knew the ending. Take June 12, 1944, near Carentan. Elements of the 101st Airborne Division advanced toward German defensive positions that intelligence officers later confirmed were not visible from the air. These positions, machine gun nests camouflaged under netting, dug into folds of land, had been identified weeks earlier in Allied briefing books. German defenders, survivors recalled, waited tensely, only to be outflanked by infantry moving directly into their blind spots. One German lieutenant, captured that afternoon, stared at an American map during interrogation. His own platoon sector was marked in red pencil. Not approximated, marked. He asked one question before going silent. Who talked? But no one had. The truth was more terrifying. Far from Normandy, in Hut 3 at Bletchley Park, England, rows of young men and women had been breaking German signals for years. By 1943, Allied codebreakers were reading vast portions of German military traffic in near real time. Train schedules, ammunition requests, casualty reports, even personal complaints sent by officers who believed themselves unheard. This intelligence, codenamed Ultra, was filtered, sanitized, and disguised before reaching the front. Commanders were forbidden from acting on it too directly. Bombings had to look accidental. Ambushes had to appear opportunistic. Yet patterns emerged, and German officers, trained to recognize patterns, noticed. By July 1944, suspicion had metastasized into paranoia. In Army Group B, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, already wounded and away from the front after July 17th, had earlier complained that Allied air attacks targeted staff cars and conference locations with uncanny timing. Rommel was no romantic. He believed in preparation and realism, but even he admitted privately that Allied intelligence seemed disturbingly complete. After the July 20th plot against Hitler, the atmosphere curdled completely. Gestapo interrogations intensified, signal officers were arrested, Enigma operators were scrutinized for errors. Some were shot. None of it helped.